welcome to this special edition of Tea Time. We're off the course, but talking about golf inside a studio with a very special panel. A panel that's going to give you insights into where this game is really going, whether or not there's money to be made, and if so, will the 10 years that follow change the game for Indian golf? That is the big discussion here, and I've got Amit Luthra joining us on the show from the Golf Foundation, Vivek Mehta of Callaway, Rishi Narain of Rishi Narain Golf Management. Also with us, our sport personality from Collage India, Latika Khaneja, and Shailendra Singh of Percept.
Sponsorship attention.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. Rishi, let's start with you. Are we really on a bit of a turning point where we know that there is potential, but the challenges are just as big?
Well, absolutely. I think golf in India right now is at a at a stage where we've really made a mark for ourselves internationally, and now overall we need to start proving that all the talk and all the hype is going to amount to something concrete. I mean, India's currently got $4.6 million of prize money on the Asian Tour, the largest share of any single country in Asia, which is kind of an oddity considering the number of players and number of followers of the game in India, much smaller than in Thailand, Malaysia and other countries. But there's a lot of signs that the potential is there. There's a lot of talent with our top players making a mark all over the world, winning international titles.
But I want to hold you on to that one. Top players making a mark. Vivek, I mean, there are of course a large number of players across the world who get a lot of attention. In India, we've got a handful. We're beginning to make a mark, but are they proving out to be that magnetic sort of, attraction?
I think it's still not completely there. I agree with you that, and with Rishi, that, there are some early indicators right now, but I'm very cautiously optimistic. I am very optimistic about India, but, when you look at where we are, it's very different from where we were a few years back. But the future is where all of us, we believe that, we are going to get to a point of inflection pretty soon, or probably we are already at one right now. And, all these indicators, whether it is the number of people getting into the game, the Indian players doing well on the world stage, good growth, 25–30% growth in the golf business in India, and then golf in the Olympics now. All these four factors, I think, are kind of signaling a pretty rapid growth coming out in the future in the industry.
Amit, how do you think we're doing on that front? I mean, I know the growth rates are exciting, but also because they're really bad elsewhere in the world. So, there's always that relative approach, oh, India is shining out there. Do you think we're making a serious effort to add golf courses, add academies, add coaches for that matter? So are we fundamentally putting up a strong foot?
I think the IU is doing an excellent job as far as promoting the amateur golf, which is the nursery for the main golfers to come up. Then, of course, we have the PGTI, which is the professional body led by Mr. Gautam Thapar. PGTI, basically you have to, IGU is pushing from the bottom up, and the PGTI is pulling up from the top up. So what the PGTI is doing is they've got probably about 27 crores lined up as far as the prize money. They have about 10 crores in the Indian circuit and about 5 international events, so which totals to about 27 crores. And this has gone up from the earlier PGAI, which was probably just about 2.5 crores about 5 years back.
Right.
So they are pulling from the top up, and the IGU is pushing out. They've got a lot of help from the RNA as well.
Yeah.
And a few of us, like-minded, have got around and started the Golf Foundation, which is even a smaller subset of the IGU, which helps the underprivileged golfers. So I think everybody is pulling up. There are a lot of academies coming up. There are a lot of golf courses coming up, designer courses and otherwise,
right.
A lot of real estate development around that. So everything is pushing towards broadening the base which we need to have the bigger pyramid and more people coming up.
Latika, so then the question is, what is the next frontier? What is the next frontier for the game of golf today?
Golf, fortunately, is not really government reliant. I mean, people are going to learn on golf courses and find aptitude and then take it forward mostly at their own expense. What the government could intervene is that beyond a certain level, they could support a player if they're marked out for a national level. Luckily, there is no real need for the government to get involved in golf training per se. It's a sport that will remain slightly elitist or caddy based, and people with access to golf courses are only going to figure out whether they can come in, and I suppose that is the hurdle as well as the reason for its success.
Shailendra, what do you think?
No, I think, Shaili, the talent has never been an issue in golf. I think our youngsters have performed well. We've also had huge names that are now playing in the world arena. I personally feel that we don't have enough events that have national or international sort of media attention, sponsorship attention. Also, in my opinion, because live golf to be shot in India, it's a very expensive process to do it. You know that physically there are not many people watching golf at a golf course because it's a difficult sport to watch. But on TV, the viewership is phenomenal. So unless we get that mix right where Indian events and Indian athletes who are playing in India, get television exposure and then become sort of living room sporting icons, until that stage, I don't see it becoming a commercially sexy property.
You know, Vivek, we keep cribbing about the golfing infrastructure in the country, but by way of pure numbers, existing golf courses are in the range of about 200. We're obviously not utilizing them enough, and there are not enough golfers when you compare, the courses themselves. So talking about infrastructure, I suppose is somewhat of a misguided missile there.
We have 200 courses, but if you look at the quality of the 200 courses, there's probably only about 50 which are really well managed in India right now. So where we do see people like about 150,000 golfers compared to 200 courses, that's not a big number. But I think when you talk to an average person who wants to take up a golf game, in a metro city or a tier 2, tier 3 city, it is not the cost. The market surveys we have done, it is just trying to figure out how to get started. But once we start seeing more number of golf courses around us, it will have an automatic effect in getting more people into the game. Today it may be a garden view for a person outside his patio or balcony, but tomorrow there's some connection that he's building with golf. His kids in the future or friends, will automatically get into the game.
Golf business happens is at clubs, and that's where there is a need for a lot of professional people to come in.
If you look at the trend is clearly saying that people are starting to, drive about an hour to kind of get to a golf course and get a full round there.
Money, Amit, and obviously, there are ways by which the Golf Foundation also helps out. But let's talk about from a sectoral point of view. In this space today, is there enough money, one, to be made, and two, to support various initiatives? Because from initiatives, I mean even public access to the game in the first place.
Let's talk about the money to be made. We are looking after the PGTI, so I have the in-depth knowledge. The 60th person last year made in excess of 3 lakhs, the 60th. And that is only on the Indian circuit. The top guy, Ashok Kumar, who's also one of our alumni of the foundation, he made close to 54 to 55 lakhs from the Indian tour itself. So they are making good money as far as the Indian tour is concerned. The Indian people have got 5 international events and 10 crores in the Indian PGTI tour. So there is a lot of money to be made as far as the pro golfers are concerned. That's why the people are coming up really fast. A lot of amateurs are turning pro.
So, I mean, well, that's of course one aspect of the money, which is of course available to pros. But I suppose to popularize the game, you've got to make the game a little more remunerative just for anybody who wants to get into it as a business. Rishi, you're partly doing business in this space, and you have a pulse on whether this is a revenue story. Is it always one where you need a title sponsor to take care before you can step in?
I think where the real golf business happens is at clubs, and that's where there is a need for a lot of professional people to come in, whether it's marketing club memberships, it's managing the club to maximize revenues, it's driving tourism into India to generate more revenues. I think that's where we have to look. Those are the areas which have not really been exploited properly. And I think if there's some more trained professionals coming into the industry, that will help the industry grow.
Shailendra, let's talk about sponsorship with you as well. After all, you sort of, organize events which needs a whole lot of fundraising. How hard has it been for you to sell golf?
Shaili, the funny thing is that we actually owned Tiger Sports for nearly 7 years. We believed in the golf dream. That's why we bought into a majority stake of Tiger Sports, and we tried our levelest best to make golf sexy, package it with interesting things where, fence sitters came to it. We brought in celebrity golf. I mean, we took people like Sushmita Sen to, golf at the Hero Honda Masters. We tried to put all sort of, spikes and excitement. But somewhere down the line, I mean, unless this whole exercise finds space on television, which lands up in everybody's living room, I don't see it really converting into sort of mass attention. It will still stay a niche product.
Let's look at this, Vivek. Now we've got these, we've got a mass market in the United States as far as golf is concerned. And people don't necessarily have to be either in a city or next to a big city to grab a game of golf, or for that matter, learn with good coaches. Do you think that next layer has the potential today?
I definitely think, adding on to what Rishi also mentioned, today, whether you look at tier 2 cities or cities with or golf courses which are a little farther out from the city center, they are struggling to kind of get the business model to work. But if you look at countries like Japan, Korea, for example, people drive 2 hours to a golf course, pay $500 for a round, and are like 10% of the population there is playing golf.
But that's 10 years away in India for sure.
So yeah, I'm not saying we are there yet, but there are these early indicators. Today, Ahmedabad, a course 20-30 miles from the city center, maybe struggling to get kids into their academies, maybe struggling to get the rounds in the golf course. But you see, if you look at the trend is clearly saying that people are starting to, drive about an hour to kind of get to a golf course and get a full round there.
Talking of some of these ideas, which is of course bringing more corporation interest into this. In India, we've got about 5 to 7 corporations who have time and again contributed to the game of golf purely out of passion, because it doesn't seem that they make as much money that they normally do on cricket, because a lot of them do sporting activity and sponsoring for a long time. Do you think that's the problem in India, the funding in terms of golf and its support?
I think it's, and Rishi probably can answer this the best. In the last 2 years that I've been in India, I've seen a change already. So having, a perspective like Rishi does over the last 15 years, I'm sure we have seen more and more corporates get into the game. Earlier, it was more like a passion of an individual which was driving sponsorships into the game. But now corporations, I've been approached by quite a few companies, brands that probably we are not even aware of in India, who want to get their brand, be visible through the game of golf.
Yeah.
So I think,
Does it need to cash in on that association that gives people a sense of being out there with the creme? Because golf is often looked at least for some time in India, it will be looked at as a game that has a swish set as opposed to a mass game just yet.
More and more we are looking at sponsors who are measuring return on investment for every rupee that they're spending. They're not doing something just for the heck of it. They are measuring sales, they're measuring customer feedback, they're measuring exposure in media. All these things are being measured very carefully, even in corporate golf. I'm not talking about just pro golf, but even at the corporate golf level, people are very serious, and
so they are harder as we go ahead. I mean, at the end of the day, today we are again in another global crisis, and all these corporate brands get impacted by, the state of the economy.
It is getting harder, definitely, because companies are very clear that they will only do stuff if there's measurable return on investment, where they can show that the strategy of golf is working. And for those who are finding that it's working, they're going to strengthen their positions and spend more. But there are a lot of other people who are going to pull back because maybe it doesn't deliver what they thought it's going to deliver.
This takes me to the larger story in India, that until you create what is a large fan base, you're not going to be able to do all of these activities repeatedly or effectively. So essentially we want to now create more noise around the game. Now you've been at the Delhi Golf Club often, you yourself are a player. How many times have you actually had, I would say, what is called house full on a golf course? I mean, we have stadia full, but we don't necessarily ever have house full on golf courses. Do you think that's somewhere we really need to do some work, popularize the game so that people want to come and watch?
You're right, Shaili. We need to have more electronic media coverage. We need to have, like in the US, almost all the tournaments are telecast globally also. We need to have live feeds. We need to have more sponsors for that.
Latika, do you think looking at F1, that's already creating a buzz and much ahead of the actual event? I mean, every time Bernie Ecclestone is in India, 45 minutes of his trip gives him about nearly, 20 hours of footage, much amount of, advertising in terms of just the noise that comes around it. Latika, do you think that's that's something that's the nature of golf. It doesn't have that attraction just yet.
All of these things do add to the buzz. If we have a huge event in India, it does. It's not probably in the manner of F1, which is much more entertainment driven and much more center part, sport. Golf is always going to be about golfers. It's just that the community of golfers is going to keep increasing. And as a result of that, there's going to be, there may not be this kind of one-time buzz, but I'm sure the buzz for golf in any case is hugely gone up from when I started playing golf 10 or 15 years ago. Nobody did, and there were hardly any places to play, and now it's much more on the radar.
At the end of the day, they do need to see that the enterprise is going to be profitable and going to make money.
This boy Shubham, who's just all of 6 years old, and Nonita Lal feels he's got the most delightful swing she's ever seen, who's learned from the internet.
Are our golfing stars fading away somewhere in our own memories? Why? Because we've got global stars. We love them, we chase them, they've got style, power game, high-speed game, this, that and the other. Do you think somewhere we are just forgetting that we have young stars who are growing, but as audiences we have no patience to wait for them to grow?
Yeah, I think, the promise of Jeev, Jyoti and Arjun, the three guys who've kind of flown the flag for the last 15 years, now needs to be quickly succeeded by the next generation. And the next generation needs to also look at its responsibility of being more accessible to the media and to the fans. I think one of the problems we've had with Indian star players is they're not accessible to the media and the fans as much as we would like them to be. Partly because they're playing overseas. Look at Arjun, he comes to India maybe 1 week a year. Now, if he was to spend 10 weeks a year in India, we could see a lot.
Be a buzz around it.
And the other point I want to make is that the companies that are supporting golf at the pro level, they need to do a lot more marketing of their events. Unfortunately, today, what happens is even with the biggest pro tournaments, you only hear about the tournament in the media a couple of days before the tournament starts, which is a total injustice.
It's not later.
If you want to build the fan base, you got to start like F1 is doing right now. You got to start the hype 6 months in advance and have a build-up to your event, and that's when you'll see the house full at the tournaments.
Let's speak to you about federations, because, I think somewhere we're forgetting that we should talk a little bit about the government with the three of you here. Do you think that there is a lot of talk once again with the government? Earlier they were pretty cagey about talking about golf because it involved land acquisition and more so for purposes that were not necessarily for rehabilitating somebody but putting out a golf course, something that would get too many eyebrows up. Is that changing or that's not?
Well, there are a few courses coming up, the government-aided courses. In fact, Rishi did a tournament just last week, which was the Karnataka state. So they are trying to popularize the game. But getting into acquisition of land to make golf courses, I don't really think that's happening. But I guess they have to be pushed. If they see the light at the end of the tunnel or the rainbow there.
So who's responsible for that push? I mean, we have federations, we have the PGTI, we have the IGU. Do you think sometimes that we have far too much of bureaucracy? Are they working at cross purposes? I know I'm putting you in a spot, but I want to know, purely from our viewers' point of view, where should they look up to?
Well, definitely, I don't think there's any organization really pushing the development of golf facilities. See, the IGU is pushing development of junior golf and the top amateur players to participate in international tournaments. That's the IGU's focus. The PGTI, as Amit mentioned earlier, is trying to develop tournaments for their professional players. So they've got their agendas very clearly outlined, but nobody has the agenda of pushing the government to develop more golf facilities.
Callaway, you've adopted several golf courses, as part of your association with them. Is that something that you faced?
I think the level of teaching, the level of support we have for these professional players, definitely there's a lot of room for improvement. As being one of the key stakeholders in the industry, we are looking at partners like David Ledbetter and getting some association with them and getting some level of support from that kind of academy into India.
What's the response when you talk to them about India? Because, it's obviously an exotic place for them to come down, and yes, it sounds good. It's the emerging market that they are associated with. But do they find it a real story?
I think right now, at least, there is interest. They obviously don't know the whole detail or the the whole ecosystem as much. So it's just like a story right now that we tell them about or they read about. So there's definitely interest. The fact that the industry is growing. There's some good golfers playing European Tour, Asian Tour. A lot of promise that we see. So there's definitely interest from David Ledbetter, Annika Sorenstam. All the golfers, when you talk to them about India, there is interest. Gary Player. But
hopefully we'll convert that at some point, because I suppose none of these people want to come without being able to make money here, right?
So yeah, that's like with any business. At the end of the day, they do need to see that the enterprise is going to be profitable and going to make money. But India is a very different story, compare in all industries. You have to be patient. The Indian consumer is different. The Indian market is different. This is a patience game here. You cannot like look for a 2-year return into any kind of investment in India.
When you say it's a patience game, it also means you have to have deep pockets. I guess that's one piece of it. Okay, as I wrap this up, let me get a couple of things going. One, what should our viewers be looking forward to in the game of golf for the rest of the year? We're starting with the season. So what tournaments do you want to flag off are happening from a national point of view?
Well, obviously the Indian Open is coming up in October at the Delhi Golf Club, and then there's going to be a whole lot of corporate and amateur golf going on during the season. Yeah. And then you've got, month of February, Avantha Masters, Sale Open, followed by the Panasonic Open. So there's a huge amount of golf coming up for people to watch.
You're looking forward to some of that?
Yeah, a lot of golf coming up in the season. We have some, as a key equipment manufacturer, we have some very exciting products coming to the market later this year. We had a very interesting innovation that we brought to the market, a new material that we launched in collaboration with the supercar Lamborghini. So we are going to see clubs which are going to be, very different from anything that people might have ever experienced before. So it's a groundbreaking technology, and the golfers in India will get to see those products maybe even before they're launched anywhere else in the world. So that's some exciting products coming down the line.
Okay, as I wrap this up, let me ask the two of you one quick question out there. I'm going to choose that question for you and Latika. Let's start with you, Shailendra, which is, what do you think is going to be the most important move in golf over the next 12 months for us to go to the next phase? We're not yet cruising, we're just about struggling in the game.
I feel that the custodians for the sport need to use Olympic, which is around the corner. It's a huge event. They need to use these platforms to activate the sport itself. That means you need to now localize it and then globalize it. That means you need to reach out to more people, make it more approachable. So whether like the idea of power golf or even putting contests, you've got to make it more approachable and affordable. And I think that will be the trick.
Olympic gold or an Olympic silver, for example, would completely revolutionize the way people look at golfers and the game as such. So Olympic is a huge, I don't think anybody knew anything about shooting till we got 2 medals for it. So I think all of this is just impetus for further development of the game.
Forget the Jeev Jyotis right now, because obviously they've had their day in the sun and they continue to do that. Who would you bet on as the next big story? An immediate, not another 20 years.
Right now probably would be Gaganjeet Bhullar, Anirban Lahiri. And coming from my foundation itself, we have Rashid Khan, who just shot a 20 under in the Nepal Open. And then you have the Chikka, who won the back-to-back national title with the junior title at the age of 16. Right. And he won a bronze recently at the Asia Pacific. Yeah. Then you have Master Honey, who's doing exceptionally well. And like I said, this boy Shubham, who's just all of 6 years old, and Nonita Lal feels he's got the most delightful swing she's ever seen, who's learned from the internet. So
okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I won't give you those many options. You choose just 2.
I would go with Gaganjeet and Anirban.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah.
That's the big bet. You?
Gaganjeet
God,
and Anirban,
they've got pressure. All these 3 guys want them. Okay, let's hope that they'll deliver, and I'm sure they will. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on the show. Appreciate it. Thanks very much.